These poisons are making American health collapse. We are being exposed at far higher rates than everywhere else in the world. It's not partisan. When a child gets cancer, they don't care if they're Democrat or Republican.
Society as a whole right now, physically and mentally unhealthy.
Yeah, legislation and advocation to get people moving again, and then find a way to do it. Movement every day, great sleep every day, whole food diet every day, and I feel like the rest really kind of works itself out.
Psychedelics,
Yes.
when it comes to PTSD and other health issues.
Yep. I'm the first VA secretary to ever say yes.
Secretary Collins, thanks for coming on the podcast.
I'm glad to be here. It's great. Thanks for being here.
How are you loving DC? I mean, you were in politics. How long have you been in politics?
I served in Congress for 8 years. I
Yeah.
moved up to leadership. I was here through all the first Trump administration, all the impeachment. I was the lead Republican on the Judiciary Committee, so I was involved in all of this. And
Wow.
And I was in the State House as well. And I've been in the military now for 23 years, in the Air Force, plus some time in the Navy. So been around this place a while.
Yeah.
DC is a place where you love to come. You love to see it. It's historical. We're sitting in a room it is. But it's taken in good doses. It's about like everything in medicine and life.
So if you had to pick between North Georgia and DC, what would you pick?
North Georgia.
Hands down?
Exactly. I go, put me outside, get me on the lake. I live on the lake. Let me go outside.
Yeah, I love it. So tell us about this room, because you told me about the history before we started recording.
Yeah.
I love history. So.
Indian Treaty Room. This is where a lot of our documents were signed as we were growing as a nation. The building is in this old what now is the old Eisenhower Executive Building, but this was the War Room, the War Department, the State Department, and actually also the Navy. So as they grew up in this sort of arena, this is places where George Marshall. This is where he came back as Secretary of State. The Pentagon, the World War II was basically started, and some of the early plans was this building as it's grown. So you see this Eisenhower. I believe it said that the first televised presidential speech was in this room. The Indian Treaty Room. And so there's a lot of things over time that's been here.
Amazing.
You're walking in history. I've always said it in buildings in D.C., especially the Capitol, the White House. If you just be quiet, the history just jumps out at you.
Yeah, it is. I love history. I'm just finishing this book about Thomas Jefferson and just these underappreciated guys. I mean, the average American don't know sort of the intricate lives that they led and the things that they did.
Oh yeah, I think one of the biggest probably lacking in education, and there's a lot of things that we could say about it, is the lack of push to read and read biographies and stuff. I tell people all the time, they ask me, I was with a class in New Jersey the other day, it was one that they wrote me a letter, and I just answered them. I said, well, instead of me writing you back, why not just zoom into your class? So we did that. And they said, well, what would you recommend for leaders? I said, read. Mm-hmm. Read. It's keep your mind sharp. And if you're 80 years old listening to this podcast right now, read, pick up the book, just use your mind, but learn stuff. Because look, history is, they seldom, it doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes a lot.
Yes, it does. So let's jump into this topic of health and veterans, the intersection of what you're doing in this whole MAHA movement. What are veterans facing? What are the biggest problems you're hearing about?
Well, the biggest issues is just like almost every American, and that is, if they're not getting the exercise they need, they're not eating properly, they're eating foods that are processed foods that are taking them away. But veterans even a little bit different in that regard, because a lot of them have been through high stress times, especially in the last 20 years. A lot of them have been deployed. They've been, some of them have experienced traumatic brain injury. There's been other things. But even the ones who did not experience, they just still that high tense environment. And for the veteran side of this is once you get out, you sort of you know the discipline, but it's easier to start losing a little bit of that discipline. Maybe you start a family, kids grow up, you don't do that. What we're just trying to say is your better long-term health care comes from looking at your diet, looking at your exercise program, and we're going to do everything we can to encourage people to do that. I'm 58 now, I'll be 59 in August. I get up every morning. My first stop is the gym. I spend about an hour in the gym, and then I have my quiet time, and then I get on my day. So there's been times when I haven't, and I can tell the biggest difference in my life when I'm not consistently thinking about my health.
Yeah. What's your workout routine look like these days?
It's a little bit changed. I used to be more cardio with the Air Force. I've been in the Air Force 23 years, and so I do a lot more cardio. So now I just do cardio, and then I've started actually doing a heavier lifting routine, which has been really good for long term. And my father's 86, and I've talked to some of his doctors, and they say add in the weights because your muscle mass you lose. And so I started doing some more supplements, do some creatine, which by the way is phenomenal for me. I have to I don't know who it might work for, but it's not just been helping with strength, but it's in sharpness. I've just noticed a complete different. Cognitive has been great, and I just had longer sitting through meetings, which I do a lot. It's just a lot better for me.
You talked about that quiet time after your workout.
Yes.
Do you have prayer practice, meditation,
Yes.
anything like that? What's that look like?
I do. I typically take. I usually do 3 scriptures. I mean, I've been a pastor for 11 years, so it's been.
Wow.
But I do and that's a chaplain is what I'm in the Air Force. I usually take a psalm, and I've got a program that just sort of randomly do a psalm. We do an Old Testament and New Testament reading, and as I go through it, it's been amazing. Look, I've faith God. I believe He puts it right there, and. It's been amazing to me the days that I'm going through some of the readings that I have, and I'll have to share one. I was in a big hearing day about a week ago, and I had both. I had 2 hearings on the Hill, which meant I was going to get grilled by over 30 plus congressmen all day. Some were happy with me, some were not. And I opened up my morning devotional for that day, and it was Psalm 91. Psalm 91 has been the warrior's prayer. You hear it, and it was this. I stopped for a moment and just smiled. I said, God, you knew what I needed.
Yeah, I love that. What my favorite verse is, be still and know that I am God. I mean, that's my meditation whenever I'm feeling anxious or dysregulated. It's true. I mean, it is sacred words, right?
How many times do we think we have to run to God? How many? The world teaches us we have to run or prove something.
Yes.
And throughout His Word, He says, listen, be still, know. Fear, and that's not a fear of trepidation. It's a fear
awe.
of, wow, He's pretty cool.
Ira. It's awe.
Yep.
It's awe in God.
That's right.
Yeah, He says, fear not.
Fear not, I'm with you.
Yeah, amen. All right, so the VA, I have a lot of telehealth patients over the years. Many of them are within the VA system, and historically there's been a disconnect between like wellness and health and root causes, right? And there's limitations on true health optimization, and you all want to change that. So what are some of the initiatives that you're hoping to do?
Well, I think the biggest thing is we're trying to, one from the top level, sort of the 30,000 foot view, is just increase the wellness awareness. Let's make sure that we're getting the things done, whether you're in our system or not. I take every veteran in this country as mine, whether they're in our system. Now I got 9 million in our system, but there's 14 to 15 million in the country. Are you being healthy? Just get in a mindset thought. Spirit, mind, the spiritual, the mental, and the physical. We got to make sure those are all aligned. The other thing is, and then take it to a practical level, is are we making sure that we're getting the help that these veterans need for their specific areas? Some of which probably in the VA system would probably be better for them. But if they can have options like yours or telehealth or in communities, we're making it a lot closer for them to get there and get that process done. And we're encouraging in our clinics, in our CBOC, a more wellness lifestyle, because veterans are much higher propensity for diabetes, they're much higher propensity for hypertension, just from the statistics and the studies that we've seen. So how can we help that beforehand? How can we get that? So in the end, it's better for the veteran, but it's also better for the government and for the world in general, because we're not spending as much money on those healthcare items.
Healthy people don't need disease management.
That's exactly right.
Exactly. Something that I've seen being in telehealth for 15, 16 years is the limitations on certain biomarkers and certain labs. I don't know if you guys have discussed that at all.
Nope.
It's just like expanding the access to wellness labs for veterans.
It's something we're looking at. I mean, we're doing a whole relook right now on our direct care, our community care aspects. And I think there's a lot of things now that are coming into be that have frankly not in the last few years. It was looked at as, I don't want to say fringe, but that was the only way I know how. And I have to say, the VA healthcare system is as conservative as you get. Okay, we're straight down the line medicine, and we're government, and we're bound by some legal aspects that we can or can't do as far as experiments and things like that. But we're also have a lot of flexibility and leeway in some things that we can fix internally. So I look at it as a great opportunity to take the largest healthcare system in the country and say, what are we now doing to maybe take some of these new ideas, take some of these things that are now coming up, taking the metabolic panel, looking at testosterone, looking at things like that, that can be simple additives to people who need them.
Yeah. Do you feel like talking to veterans and being around the country and getting to see the people that you're serving, how are they feeling about the MAHA movement? Like there's a lot of crunchy, wellnessy people that maybe it's a converging of worlds. Let's say that
it is. I think it's a generational. I think you got to be frank. The GWAT generation, my generation, this last 25 years of military, probably get it more than, or at least more open to it than say my Vietnam era generation. The Vietnam era generation, that's my dad, that's my uncles, and they're more traditional mindset, and some of them frankly at their age they're looking at ways to help, but a lot of it is they've gotten built in the lifestyle. So what we've got to do, and we've not really talked about it a lot, but in DOD, which is the defense before we ever get them, we've got to make sure that their kids, and even after they get out, that we're creating a lifestyle with their families.
Yeah.
because it can't be just one. We want the families to be involved in this and be healthy. Because right now it's a recruitment issue. I'm going to take a step back a step further. If we don't get our next generation healthy, we only have about 20% of our kids right now who qualify because of health issues. 20%.
Wow.
Now you say that's 100 people, you've taken 80 off the books.
Yeah.
For the plethora of reasons, you're down to 20. Well, they still have college, and I mean, some of these are high achievers. They're going to go to college. They're going to go to take a job, or some of them just want to be plumbers and welders, which is great. So that number slips down to 8 to 10.
Yeah.
This is the one that's taking care of us in the future. We've got to do a better job at this.
Well, that statistic alone should bring everyone behind it. I mean, that's just unsustainable.
It's not. Yeah, it's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable.
Yeah, and even if you go up to 30%, which, I've seen it between 20 and 30,
Yeah.
it's still not sustainable
No, right.
over long
30%.
term.
Yeah. Let's jump in. Before we go, the podcast is called The Art of Being Well. I'm going to pick your brain on a few different things within wellness. What is the worst tasting healthy food that you eat? You don't do it for the taste, you do it for the health benefits.
Worst tasting healthy food.
Could be a supplement. Sometimes it's a supplement. Sometimes it's a food.
Yeah, I've always been one that I've used like protein fillers and stuff like that, but that taste has never got there for me with some. But also for the most part, it's amazing for people out there who worry about taste. The transition that I've seen over the last few years of sometimes from vitamins, liquid. I use a liquid vitamin, and I don't use because it was one that it breaks down quicker and it gets in my system. And so those even tastes have gotten better. So for me, I'm doing pretty good right now.
That's pretty good. Actually, I want to ask you about the opioid crisis with everybody, but specifically with veterans. What are the statistics with?
We're similar to the general population,
Okay.
except there's a proclivity there because of some of the injuries,
Pain,
because of
yeah.
be in the pain management.
Chronic injury.
And we're still in that traction a lot of times with the VA, and some of those others is saying, how do we move people who come with PTS and traumatic brain injury or chronic injury, chronic pain? Is the answer simply to give them an opioid? Is it simply? I want us to be able to try something different, and there's some stuff that's coming out, which is good. This is, we have new treatments from, oxygen treatments to magnetic resonance treatments. These things that are showing good results, and so I think those are the kind of things I think that we get to move us off of it. They'll always sort of be there, the opioid, but I don't want it to be. Okay, or even some of the what I'll call the psycho drug, psychosomatic drugs, where your Zoloft, your stuff like that,
SSRIs.
depression. We don't need to Band-Aid the problem. Many of those folks, they need maybe some help, but they need somebody to help them walk through it.
Yeah.
And for people listening to the podcast, please hear me. There's no pill out there going to solve you. I don't care what it is. It could be a supplement. It could be, no pills out there going to solve your problem.
Yeah.
Okay. You've got to take a holistic approach to your life.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we got to
It's
get
a combination effect.
Yep.
Something that I know HHS is wanting to do, and I talked to Jay today, is kind of expanding the research in psychedelics when it comes to PTSD and other health issues. Have you guys talked about this, sort of these out of the box but emerging and very promising
Yes, very much so.
therapies?
I'm the first VA secretary to ever say yes, and I'm open to it. And I think we put it in proper context.
Yeah.
That it's going to work for some, it may not work for everyone. The studies are still positive at this point. We know a lot of people that's very much help. But then, again, when you use limited samples, let's see what we can do. So we've got 11 studies that are going on around VA and in VA with these right now. What we have seen the best success at is ones that are used in like a one-time treatment, MDMA treatment, and then a 2-week intensive counseling.
Okay.
In its whole setting, so that they get it all. And we've seen numbers drop dramatically and stay over a year period. So we just got to build up time. It's going to be hard. Congress is a lot of older generation that believe drug bad, okay? Except unless it's a prescription, and for some reason we have a happiness about that. But what we're just trying to say is let's be open. It's not saying it's going to fix everything, but we also can't turn our minds to, because I'm losing 17 to 22 people a day in veteran community. I'm not going to stop trying to find a way to get that number down.
Yeah. Anything else that you hear coming from the health research side that you're excited about implementing within the VA?
That's really where I think the biggest thing is some of the counseling issues. I think there's also needs to be a change of thought. Many times we look at veterans who have a traumatic brain injury, or they have PTS, they have the other issues. We look at them as broken.
Right.
They're not broken in the sense of that they're, they're molded differently now. How do we then take that? Everybody in our life, you probably the same way, and especially listeners today, it's been the moments that I have struggled the most that have grown me the most. So why don't we, again, emphasize you're not the victim here. You've had bad experiences. You've had bad things happen. And we need to work through how you process that. But that could be the opportunity to greatness.
Yeah.
There's opportunity for greatness out there. And I so believe in the veterans. I so believe in our country. Let's quit being victims. Let's quit looking at it from only the problematic I have and move it towards something that actually be positive.
Okay. Secretary, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate
It's been great. I love it. Thanks for what you're doing.
Vani Hari. So this has been a moment. We tried to get this scheduled. You've been busy. We had to come to the White House to get this done.
Yeah, we did.
So
Yeah.
we're in the Eisenhower building of the White House compound. What could you ever have imagined that you're here, that all of this had transpired?
Yeah, I mean, I am so incredibly grateful we're here at this moment. I never thought the President of the United States would care about the issues that I cared about so deeply. And I never thought that the President of the United States would even have the guts and the courage to tell the American people the truth about what's been done to their health. And today, with the release of this Maha Commission report and the truth that's coming out about our ultra-processed foods and the food additives and the farming chemicals and the microplastics and everything we're being exposed to, the entire chemical soup that we're being exposed to, talked about in this report, the pharmaceuticals, the over-pharmaceuticalization of our youth. Thinking about me as a child and how I was on 9 prescription drugs so early on in my life. And everything that I was encountering and facing from a health perspective was related to the food I was eating. If I had just known the truth about what had been done to our food and how to eat real food, I would have avoided all of that pain and suffering. And that is what is going to happen here today with getting this truth out to the American public. They're going to realize that they need to make a change, a lifestyle change, that they need to take back control of their food, that they need to start cooking at home, that they're going to learn the truth about how our food is farmed and the chemicals that are used in it and how they affect infertility and cancer and autoimmune disorders. The fact that 87% of children's urine has glyphosate in it, the fact that we are exposed 500 times more than our European counterparts, that we have 60 other countries banning a chemical like atrazine because of the infertility links and cancer links of atrazine, and learning this truth that's coming from the executive branch of the government will have generational impact for years to come.
Yeah, well said. For people that don't know about atrazine, I haven't talked about it at length on the podcast, like where is it at in the environment or products that we're using?
I mean, it's used on corn. It's used in farming practices, and the problem is it's getting into our water.
Yeah.
And it's one of those chemicals that's really hard to get out of your water. Even if you have a water filtration system, you can still detect it sometimes. And so it is, and I think what's so sinister kind of about these farming chemicals like glyphosate, where, you know, many of the world's developing nations regulate glyphosate a little differently. For example, they don't allow the pre-harvest use of glyphosate, where farmers are allowed to spray it on crops right before it's harvested. That practice only accounts to about 3% of the total product use of glyphosate, but adds a 90% load on the human's consumption of that glyphosate. So that specific farming practice, just eliminating that would significantly help us reduce our toxic load of these chemicals, right? Yeah. And so this is, you know, we're kind of swimming in a toxic soup. You know, a lot of us are trying to go buy organic or try to buy, you know, healthy foods, but we're still getting these chemicals in our water. You know, we're still being exposed to this, right? And so this is the stuff you can't see when you buy a fruit or a vegetable. It's the herbicide that penetrates the skin, that's internal to the fruit or vegetable, that you can't wash off. And so that's a critical fight that's going to happen. I mean, the chemical lobby, I'm thinking about companies like ChemChina, who make atrazine, and Monsanto Bayer, who makes Roundup, which glyphosate is the main ingredient for. They are extremely sophisticated in their lobbying efforts, and they're organized, and they collude with farm bureaus and for farmers to do their bidding, and they pay politicians to do their work. They pay quote unquote independent experts to be a mouthpiece for them. They are, I actually wrote a whole book about this, Feeding You Lies, on how they use front groups, groups that look reputable, like the American Council for Science and Health, the Genetic Literacy Project, and others that sound so scientific and
nonpartisan,
and academic and nonpartisan, but they're really doing the bidding for these chemical these hardcore chemicals that have detrimental human effects, and they try to hide the effects of their chemicals from the American public. They'll do anything to do it. They'll ghostwrite papers and responses to the EPA to prevent this from happening. And it's the reason why, in 2015, the IARC, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, said that glyphosate is a probable carcinogen. This is 10 years ago now, whereas our EPA still refuses to say that.
Yeah.
Today, that's stopping, right? In this report, it shows the links and the harms of this, right? Whether the EPA will do it or not, this report is doing it. And this report is going to, I think, lead to common sense solutions, like eliminating this pre-harvest use. It really needs to happen tomorrow, I feel like, and we need to figure out the resources we need to get to farmers so that they can make the transition, right?
For people that don't know, what does the pre-harvest?
So it's the spraying of glyphosate to dry the harvest so they can have a quicker harvest rotation. And they do this to wheat, and they do this to oats, and they do this to beans, and they do this to a lot of conventional crops. So even if you're going to the grocery store and you're trying to buy a non-GMO project thinking you're avoiding these chemicals, you're still getting these chemicals when you buy anything conventional.
Yeah.
And even in organic food, it's being contaminated by this application of pre-harvest use of desiccant.
So obviously we want change, and there's a lot that has to happen. In the meantime, or because there's so much messiness in the food supply, any pro tips you have for people to pick the best they can and give the rest to God?
Yeah, I mean, I would love for everyone to start to grow something at home. Like, this is, okay, so can we just talk about my ideal world?
Let's do it.
Everybody having a home garden. Everybody enjoying fresh fruits and vegetables that they grow at home. Whether it's a tomato plant or like me, where I grow all kinds of different sprouts on my front porch. Growing your own food is, first of all, like printing your own money, so you save money. But number two, it's been unadulterated. How you grow, you grew it. The chemicals that you're using on that soil. You're picking, you're getting to pick the soil. You're getting to add nutrients back to the soil when you compost things from your kitchen, right? So that is one way to take back control, start a garden. The other way is to start cooking at home and picking foods that from farmers that aren't using these heavy intensive chemicals, and meeting your local farmer and going to your farmers markets and looking for that. And then I think the third thing is looking for the organic label, because the organic label is going to protect you the most. It's not only going to protect you from the harmful pesticides and herbicides that are being used in insecticides, but it's also going to protect you from thousands of food chemicals that are prohibited in organic food.
So, well, not perfect. It's the best option we have at this point.
Yes.
Okay, so what do you say to the people that, let's talk about the sort of EPA, because you and I see the same things on social media when we post about these topics, is that, the EPA is, they're stopping the regulations on PFAS, or they're doing bad things over in the EPA with decreasing regulations. What's the truth there? And then also the interplay between HHS and the EPA, and maybe some incongruous perspectives on health and the environment.
here's my honest answer. I wish we could just roll the EPA right under Secretary Kennedy at HHS. You know, that's my honest answer. But no, here's the reality of it. The MAHA Commission, creating a MAHA Commission, has allowed there to be a synergistic collaboration between the EPA, between the Secretary of Agriculture and the USDA and the HHS, right? Mm-hmm. And so coming together with all of the issues that span all of those agencies in this report, mm-hmm. and still telling the American people the truth about mm-hmm. what's happening mm-hmm. to our health with these chemicals mm-hmm. is outstanding, mm-hmm. right? And I think that's the first step. And then once Americans get the truth, they can demand change, mm-hmm. right? And I think this is where our movement's growing. Mm-hmm. And our movement's going to grow big time today, right? When Americans learn the truth about the chemical toxic soup that they've been exposed to and all the different facets of what's been causing chronic disease, people are going to want to be part of the Make America Healthy Again movement. They're going to be part of this voting faction of like, we're going to be voting for our elected officials based on the fact if they're going to make me healthier, because nothing is more important than health. And I think Americans are starting to realize that more than ever because of the chronic diseases we are facing in this country, and people are suffering. They're suffering like I used to suffer, and I remember that suffering, and it's why I deeply am so passionate about doing this work, because I don't want to see that suffering anymore. And so we're going to demand in the next election cycles and the next ones after that. And the MAHA movement's going to outgrow MAGA. You know, when President Trump is done, we're going to keep going. This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. Mm-hmm. And so we are going to, this is going to set the foundational change mm-hmm. In policy innovation mm-hmm. On creating the next companies of the next generation, the companies that start to poison us less, that figure out how to take the chemicals out of food. It was one of the reasons why I started True Vani, was I want to take the chemicals out of my protein powder that I was using as fast food, right? Yeah. I wanted to take the chemicals out of my bars that I was eating, and I wanted to use ingredients that you would find in your own kitchen. This is the kind of innovation we need from our capitalistic society that we live in, so that Americans can stop being poisoned, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's going to spawn that kind of innovation, and then it's going to spawn common sense policy change. Mm-hmm. And I think it goes back to this. I think the most common sense policy change right now on farming chemicals mm-hmm. is, number one, ban atrazine like they do in 60 other countries, but number two, remove the pre-harvest use of glyphosate. Mm-hmm. Because again, it's not going to be, it's not going to affect farming like you think it's going to affect. We can give those farmers different methods to follow, mm-hmm. But it will reduce 90% of the load that we're getting, the toxic load from glyphosate, and why it's ending up on all of our healthy, quote unquote, foods. Right.
Okay, what do you say to the people that are screaming at us as big wellness? You know, you're coming, you guys in wellness are coming at big chem and big pharma and big food. You're big wellness. You're part of this. You're just as bad as they are.
Oh, I just want people to eat real food. I'm so evil.
The horror.
Right?
The corruption.
No, we need more big wellness, right? Like, we need more innovation in this space. We need more, like, I want to be able to go to the airport and have, like, my smorgasbord of real food to choose from, not the minuscule options that exist today. I want to go down in the Whitehouse cafeteria and pick anything I want to eat instead of being, like, horrified, right? Mm-hmm. That's the kind of world I want to live in. And so we have to spawn that innovation. Mm-hmm. And I know the chemicals were affecting my health, because when I went off all those ultra-processed foods and went to whole real food and got off every single one of my prescription drugs and lived a life that I never thought was possible, I know what can happen when you get whole real foods in your body and you start to make better choices on what you're buying at the grocery store.
What do you say to some people that they can't see past their own political tribalism, right? Their brains break. The idea, because you're not. I mean, you worked on you were a part of the Obama campaign, right? When he ran for president. You're not a historic Republican. I want people to understand this diverse coalition of people, because they're hearing the different on social media and in the media.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I want everyone to know I am fighting for humanity. I am team humanity. These poisons are making American health collapse. we are being exposed at far higher rates than everywhere else in the world. And we can't just sit back and let these people do this to us. We have to stand up. And thank goodness for President Trump's leadership and getting Secretary Kennedy in a position of power to address these issues at this level. And he sees the urgent need to do it. And we've never had that kind of leadership before on these issues, that top-down leadership that has put us in the White House here today, right? Talking about these things that we've been working on for most of our lives. And, poison is not partisan. When a child gets cancer, they don't care if they're Democrat or Republican. And, I've been waiting for this moment. I honestly can't believe it that, we're in this situation where, half of the political spectrum, another political party is literally sitting on their hands on these issues right now. They're afraid to do anything about it because they don't want to make this administration look good. Instead, they should be trying to out-Maha the administration, right?
Yes.
There should be a competition
There
about doing this, and I think they're going to get a rude awakening in the next election cycle because the Maha movement is growing faster than ever, and it's a political voting base. We're going to be looking for the next leadership that's going to take on these issues and keep the Maha movement growing and going, right? And so if that's the Republicans, it's got to be the Republicans, right? And I will be on board to help whoever is in office to make sure we know the truth about what's been done to our food supply and how to get Americans truly healthy.
My friend, this has been amazing. Before we go, we're running low on time. We'll have to have you back.
Yeah. We'll have to go longer.
This will be this is just a teaser for everybody.
Yeah.
Where do people go to learn more about your work?
Yeah, just come on over to foodbabe.com. I'm at the Food Babe on all social media. And thank you so much, Will. It has been such a journey to be on this mission with you. You've been on lockstep with me. You came to Battle Creek, Michigan, and marched with 400,000 signatures to Kellogg's headquarters for them to tell us to get off their lawn. And I think back to that day, and that was a gift. That was a gift because it energized Secretary Kennedy to take our issues to the campaign trail and elevate our voices to President Trump, and now we are here at the White House.
Amen.
Yeah.
My friend, it's a blessing to know you. Honestly, I mean it from the bottom of my heart. This is a God thing, but he's used you in an amazing way, bringing us all together, and I just can't thank you enough.
Thank
you. Anthony, welcome to The Art of Being Well.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's a little rapid round right now.
Yes.
It's shorter than usual, but it's all right. We'll have you back for a full-length episode later.
Love to do it.
So what do you think about this whole movement? Speaking of movement, we're going to dig into movement today. Did you ever think that movement in this way, beyond just talking points, beyond just political pontification, to really have a meaningful conversation around movement, do you ever think it would happen on a national level?
Yeah, not a national level, right? Because it takes the act of a president, the administration being willing to listen, and never at a time have we ever seen more entrepreneurial private individuals, at least from my industry, from the fitness industry, wanting to be involved, right? I mean, we all have jobs, we all have lives and kids and other things we got to take care of. And so it's a sacrifice to do it. And so you only want to do it if you feel like you can actually affect change.
Yeah. So what do you say? We're in the wellness space. We are in, I'm in healthcare. This to me should be a human issue, not a partisan issue.
Agreed.
I want this to be unifying.
Yep.
That is not connecting with some people. They cannot see past their own tribalism. So how do you, I mean, this is not always easy for people like us to take a stance on it because the context gets lost. So
Agreed.
What's your message for people who still can't see past their political tribalism?
Yeah, so for me, it's about making America move again, right? I mean, there's a Maha movement, which is, of course, making America healthy.
Yeah.
But to get to health, I feel like we need three just real basics, right? Sleep, quality food, and movement. And if people can start there, right?
Yeah.
And so tell me that getting up and going to your mailbox is a political issue, right? Just get off the couch, go to the mailbox, right? Take the stairs to the escalator. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, walk the aisle.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'd like to stay there and not really sidestep those political issues because everyone has their views, but at the same time, just, argue with me that, that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
That people shouldn't be moving.
And why wouldn't someone like yourself want a seat at the table when these conversations are happening, right? It's would we forgo having these important conversations? Okay, so What do you want to happen on a federal level as it relates to fitness and movement?
Yeah, legislation and advocacy to get people moving again, and then find a way to do it. We spend a lot of time talking about, the functional medicine side of things, the nutrition side of things. We harp on sleep a bit, right? We kind of tell people a bit how to sleep, and everything's about execution and education first, right? It's hard to execute on something if you don't understand what you're doing. So the part of education is what you guys are doing a great job on. For me, the execution of movement isn't happening.
Yeah.
Right? You kind of look around the room today, like who in here is representing the fitness industry? There's nobody, right?
Yeah.
So when you talk about movement,
Yeah.
it really, to me, is a ball that's been dropped, right? Because we just assume people understand what to do. Just like but we don't assume that people understand how to eat. Right? We're
Yeah.
spending a lot of time telling people, like, this is what you should eat. This is good for you. It's bad for you. But when it comes to movement, we just assume that everybody knows, we're humans. We all know how to go work out or walk or run or whatever it might be. And so, I built a 20-year career. I've done, tens of millions of people working out, right?
Yeah.
I've owned the largest brands. I've owned 15 brands in the fitness industry, thousands and thousands and thousands of locations.
For people that don't know, like, what are some of the brands that you've built?
Club Pilates, Pure Bar, stuff like Stretch Lab.
My wife does Pure Bar. She's a fan.
Yeah, Yoga 6, right? I've just done a lot of big brands. Today I have Pilates Addiction, iFlex, EMS suit with Body 20. Infrared saunas and red light, and so just that health and wellness space. I owned UFC Gym originally back in the day with Dana and the Fertittas, and so
Amazing.
I've just kind of been through these different phases of movement over the last 20 years. Whether we were getting people to move in a UFC gym, holding hand pads, or getting them to do yoga, or just when you're 70, 80 years old, sometimes people just need the flexibility and the stretch, right? But it's getting them out of the house, getting them moving, getting them flexible, which then makes people want to continue to do it. It's hard to work out and go home and eat a bowl of ice cream.
Yeah.
Right? But if you just sit on the couch, then the ice cream sounds appealing.
Yeah.
Right?
How does that, like, from a messaging standpoint, where does it happen? In schools, I'm assuming we have to have more conversations in schools?
Absolutely. And we need to have more advocacy in schools for kids to start moving, right?
Yeah.
And so because once they become adults, like, think about the statistics of how many people sprint past 30 years old. It's close to zero, right? You start asking people, like, when was the last time you sprint? And people are like, oh, I took a jog. No, sprint. Like sprint like somebody is chasing you, right? I did it this morning. I get up, I'll do 10 wind sprints on the street, right? People think you're crazy because they think you're running from something. But you get 10 wind sprints in, right? I get up in the morning, you get that with your nutrition. It's really hard to go eat breakfast and eat a garbage diet.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
You want something healthy after that. You feel healthy. Your body's active again. It's moving again. It's stretching again, right? And so that's where we need to focus, is getting people there, because those three need to harmonize together, right? Whole food diet, sleep, and movement. And then inside of those buckets, it's kind of what do you believe and where you want to move around.
Yeah. At this point in your life, what's your favorite type of exercise?
So it just depends. For me today, I've gone through many phases, which is what's so great. That's why I've stayed in the space of 15 different brands, because things will appeal to people. Your wife does Pure Bar now. She may do Pilates in a year, and she may do cycling in 3 years, right?
Yeah.
And so, but my basis is I just kept her moving for 5 years, right? Regardless of what she wants to do.
Yeah.
So today I love weight training and wind sprints. It's kind of been my thing for the last few years, and so just eat less, move more. So.
Okay, good deal. Okay, so the weight training, what's that look like? Is it a classic work? It's like circuit training. What type of?
I say it's like lift as heavy as you can. So I'm gonna shit
With
your
good
pants
form.
heavy, right? Yeah, with good form. Yeah. So, but just like I said, once again, just getting back to the movement, right? I'm happy to see people moving, and if weight training appeals to them or sprinting appeals to them, I don't want the couch and a sedentary lifestyle to appeal to them, right?
It's so much connected to technology, right? I mean, that's kind of this momentum of keeping people lethargic and sedentary is this sort of dopamine draw towards being numbed and distracted, right? So this conversation that you want to be having on a federal level, we have to talk about technology. How do we do that when it's so intertwined with the human mind at the moment?
Right. Well, it's just you need to make technology, less appealing than movement, right? And so in our schools, as we started to say, okay, let's just bring people in, let's use technology to kind of sacrifice human interaction and outdoor stuff. It's very hard to use an iPhone when you're sprinting. It's hard to use an iPhone when both your hands are on a bar and you're lifting dumbbells, right? You know what I mean? And so if we get people moving, I feel like these things like sleep, like nutrition, like technology, start to work themselves out, right? Because the ultimate outcome becomes totally different.
Yeah, and obviously technology is a blessing, and there's a lot of amazing things that technology has done for fitness,
Absolutely.
right? But it's like, especially the younger mind, but all of us, we're kind of entranced by this sort of FOMO-inducing scrolling on social media or this binge-watching things online. So I'd like to know, I'm thinking about the president. Do you think we get the president in a bar class?
I don't,
Is that possible?
I don't know. Most men can't make it through a bar class.
I can't.
So that is.
I couldn't.
Yeah, we're smart enough to walk into a bar class and look at it and be like, yeah, that's not for a guy. I'm going to walk out, because in the back of your mind, you're like, I don't know if I'm going to get through 20 minutes of that.
I love it. The podcast is called The Art of Being Well. This is your Art of Being Well. What is the worst tasting healthy food that you eat? You don't do it for the taste, you do it for the benefits.
Oh God, for me, a ton of vegetables is the worst tasting healthy food I do.
What's the one that you don't like the most?
Brussels
that you still
sprouts
do?
is probably I don't like the most. That my wife makes a good version of.
You could do, like sautéed, some oil, some bacon.
She does. She bakes
cranberries.
it.
Yeah,
She bakes
baking's
it and
good,
does really well with it. But yeah, I've got 2 little girls at 7 and 10, and so I've got to show that, I got to get them to eat just a little bit more than a steak.
Yeah.
But my wife handles that in the kitchen. She does an excellent job. She's the one that actually brought me into this kind of Maha movement, because she's so excited about it.
Interesting. That's amazing, man.
Absolutely.
Were you reluctant to do that when she said, "Hey, get involved in this"? Were you reluctant because it is so at this point? Look, we're doing more to kind of disentangle it from one political party, because it shouldn't be. But were you reluctant at first?
Yes, definitely reluctant, because I want to affect change. If I'm going to take time out of my day, right? I don't have anything to monetize here today. I'm not trying to get a bunch of eyeballs. I don't have an Instagram, right? This is not what I do.
So I can't tag you when this episode
No,
drops?
you can't tag my company for sure.
Okay,
but yeah, I don't. I'm not looking to do that. Like I said, I want to get people healthy. I want to get them off the couch. If that's with my mom, I told her the other day, I'm like, go to the mailbox, right, and then go to the next mailbox. She's in a cul-de-sac, and I'm like, by the end of the week, you'll be able to do the cul-de-sac, right? And I take her on trips with me, and we don't get Ubers. I make her walk. And she can walk so much further at the end of a European trip. Like at the end of 6-7 days in Europe, she's a completely different person. She's eating different. She's moving different. She's feeling better. Yeah. So for me, it just kind of always starts with that core piece of movement, and then the rest tends to work itself out.
What is a good fitness check point, I guess, for someone to kind of see, okay, I think I'm all right, or maybe someone's like, yeah, definitely not. What should the average person be able to do that's like bare minimum of a good fitness level?
Well, so I think there's a few, right? Get people to try and do 25 push-ups, especially a man. That's the best part, right?
Yeah.
Get people to walk a half a mile. See if they don't have to stop. Right. I mean, there's certain things, and I think as men, especially as people get older, right, we have this sort of male ego type situation. You try and do 25 correct push-ups, most people can't.
Yeah.
And it's very demeaning to get to 12.
Okay, so does it on the knees push-up count for this litmus test?
That does not count.
So it does not count.
That
so
does
we're talking
not
about
count.
full plank.
Yeah. You'll end up there probably past 15 just to get the next 10 done. But yeah, no, you're not supposed to be there.
Okay, so 25 push-ups. What's another one?
Yeah, 25 push-ups, walking even a half mile, right? Just getting people to move. And we were at dinner with Gary last night, all of us, and I look the Uber, right? And it's raining and it's dark and I'm in some city by myself, right? And I look and it's 0.7 miles. It's 12 minutes to walk. It's 8 minutes for an Uber. Mm-hmm. Right? I'm like, I'd rather have 4 minutes more and walk. I told my wife, I took my nice watch off. I'm like, I'm gonna keep my head on a swivel. She's like, you're gonna get mugged. I'm like, yes, but I'm gonna get mugged fit, right? You know what I mean? So it's just making those small little decisions, and they add up.
Yeah, I make my son. We walk when we're in New York or travel for work. We're walking everywhere. It's fun. You
Absolutely.
can see the world. You don't need to.
Yeah, I love Sydney, Australia. Was just there. Another, amazing walkable city.
Yeah,
I mean, you can
so many walkable
You can go
cities.
do 10 miles in Sydney, just walking around and seeing things. DC's a lot like that, especially when the weather, gets a little bit better. The inauguration was, snow and 10 degrees, so you're going to die trying to walk. But
we did it, and all the streets were closed. It was wild.
It was nuts,
but worth it.
Nuts.
Worth it. Okay, so. Do you take any supplements, and if so, what are the maybe 2 that are the lesser known out-of-the-box supplements that people should know about?
Yeah, I don't think they're lesser known. I always stick to basics. So, vitamin D with, K2 and omegas and, methylated multivitamin and magnesium, zinc, all those kind of things. Salt my water in the morning. I get up, I shoot my salt. That's what I did today. Ran 10 sprints, and that's how I start the day, right? And it's tough to have a bad day that way.
Yeah.
It's a good start.
It's a great start of the day. How long are you doing those sprints?
It's usually about 25 to 30 seconds before you tap out, but you run as fast as you can until you feel like you can't anymore, and then usually if I'm on a street, I'll walk back to the other end, and then do it again. Just do it over and over
full
again.
exertion, full capacity.
Yeah, and I've been doing that about 7 years now, and I love it. It's great when you do it with other people because you can, you try and sprint faster than they do, and watch them try and keep up.
Sort of like, would that be considered re-hit? Exercise to reduce exertion?
Look, ultimately you're just trying to, you're trying to raise your heart rate and let it cool and raise it again. And
for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. What's the weirdest, most out of the box thing you've done for your wellness that you're willing to admit on a podcast?
Oh God, just from a nutrition perspective
anything,
or from
anything. I've heard rectal ozone, fecal transplants. I mean, we get really weird here. So
yeah, no, nothing super weird. I think for me, I like I said, I stick to the basics, and I still feel like that's kind of tried and true to get whatever you want to call it, 80-90% of the benefit, right? You start to do a lot. I mean, rectal ozone, I'm sure, I don't know, you must be at like 99.9 and you're trying to get the last 0.01 or whatever it might be. But yeah, no, I feel like the three core things is just movement every day, great sleep every day, whole food diet every day, and I feel like the rest really kind of works itself out.
What's your top tip for a great night's sleep?
So, I take magnesium, during the day. So from a supplementation standpoint, don't eat a couple hours before you go to bed so your body's not sitting there trying to digest itself while it's happening. Obviously none of these phones and devices while you're laying in bed. You don't need that kind of blue light, at night. And then just sitting there, I like to sit and meditate a little bit and just think about my day and just kind of go into sleep. But even when stress levels are high, work is high, things are happening, I still, been a dad and a husband, for a while now. And so just still sleep like a baby at night, which is great.
What is a book that you've read? It could be fiction, nonfiction, that was paradigm shifting for you. I'm getting a running Art of Being Well book club. What should I add to the list?
So crazy as it is, I am not a reader. And so I read, I think for work, I read so many emails and contracts and text messages.
I read email chains.
I'm just like, at the end of the day, I'm like, the last thing I'm going to do for fun is read some more.
Do you like podcasts, audiobooks, anything like
that? No, I don't. It's crazy.
I love it. Just emails.
It's crazy. I read emails, text messages, and contracts, and that's enough to ruin a day, so I'm good.
That's good, man. Where can people go to learn more about your companies, the work that you're doing?
Yeah, sequelbrands.com is my newest portfolio company. So we've got Body 20, which is an EMS suit brand, which is doing phenomenally well. We got Beam Infrared and Red Light Sauna, which is great, and getting people in there and getting the health benefits of that, recognizing that. And then a new brand called Pilates Addiction, where we actually have, a 14 karat gold looking reformers. So we have gold reformers and a great, kind of a great setup. And then iFlex, where people can go and get stretch and flexibility. And for some people, that is a workout, right? If you're 80 years old, that is your movement. That is a workout. People in wheelchairs, things like that, where they can actually come and get flexibility and get out of their chair and get moving again.
Don't sleep on stretching, right? You're calling me out right now. I don't prioritize it enough, and I know it's essential.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, man, thanks so much for coming on.
Of course, thank you.
Nice meeting you.
Of course, great to meet you.
Yeah. Noah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
How did you get connected to this Maha movement?
It all kind of happened pretty quickly once Trump got reelected. My best friend and I, we were kind of, even prior to that, we were talking about manifestation. We got really into like Joe Dispenza, and more so him because he wanted to get into a different line of work. We have a mutual friend that's connected to the Whitehouse, and he got us hooked up with going to the inauguration. And then I know Saladino pretty well, and I reached out to him, and he got us into the Maha Ball. And it was just.
I was at the same ball.
Yeah.
There was so many people. I didn't see you there.
Yeah, it was a wild time, but it was awesome being around the same like-minded people.
Yeah. I love it that ball. No one was drinking alcohol that I saw. It was like the healthiest most sober, clear-minded ball in all of DC
like all
history.
the canned euphoric drinks, and I just had a Maha event with Dr. Phil and Del Bigtree spoke at my house, and there was probably close to 60, maybe 60 to 80 people there, and we're like, man, like the party was 6 to 9, everybody is out by 9:30, and I'm like, wow, my house is like super clean right now. And they brought a bar, or they had an alcohol provider, and I'm like, there's so much just left over. So just the community and being part of something bigger.
It's a positive community,
something
for sure.
I'm super passionate about, and health and wellness has always been something that I'm
How
very
far back
intrigued
did
in.
health and wellness, like how long has it been part of your life?
Probably since I was, well, I mean, I've been an athlete. I loved sports my entire life. And then I became like, I was a late bloomer, got a little chubby, didn't really pay much attention to my diet when I was a kid. And then all of a sudden one day, I remember I was at Chili's probably when I was like 15 years old, and with my dad, and instead of ordering a Coke, I ordered a water, and like, it's kind of crazy how I still remember that. And then it went from like my dad driving me to the YMCA, and I'm just ripping the elliptical and machines, not knowing what I'm doing, like, and just doing cottage cheese and rating GNC, thinking I'm healthy. But now it's like really evolved since then.
But you
now,
started out with what you knew, and then, yeah, I guess that's a great next question. Like, how did it evolve? What does a day in the life look like of wellness for you today?
I mean, I guess I was always obsessed with like superheroes. I got the Thor moniker.
Yeah,
but
you're
even before that,
that's your moniker
Yeah, I
within
guess
the
that's-
sport world.
Yeah, I guess that's what they call me.
I did
but,
see that in
so-
preparation for our conversation.
Yeah, I was always obsessed with that, and like, how can you? What's the closest thing to feeling like a superhero, and like just feel your optimal best at any time? And I think that people don't pay attention to what they put in their body, or like the environmental toxins that are around you that are huge detriments to your health, because our baseline should be pretty normal if we're not like poisoning ourselves with what we put in our body and what we surround our body with.
Have you eaten yet today?
Yeah, first thing I did when I woke up is I ran to Whole Foods, and I got the essentials, Mountain Valley. I normally like raw dairy, but I lucked out and I found some cool low fat pasteurized A2 regenerative milk. I got some cold brew that's dumped down in glass. I do like caffeine and coffee, and then I loaded up on some fruits. I got some bone broth, like what is it? The Kettle and Fire makes the Maui Nui venison
Love that. The
bone
deer
broth.
broth.
So I got some watermelons and blueberries. That was about it. And
Amazing,
Then
man.
I went to the gym, worked out, got a little pump in, and
What's your workout routine look like?
I haven't played baseball in 2 years, but I'm still training. My training has changed drastically because I used to love putting up big numbers and trying to get as big as possible. But now I've shifted my training more like functional, a lot of kettlebells, a lot of like sprint work, jumping, more play. I've just gotten so like doing squats and bench press is just so boring now. I'll maybe do that once a week just to like stroke my ego a little bit and feel good and feel big. But I want to be able to like move. Sometimes like people don't realize like the violence of pitching, like there's a lot on the body, and sometimes I wake up and I feel like I'm 80 years old and I want to try to reverse that a little bit. So I mean, I love just any kind of like functional power, getting more into like some safer Olympic lift variations just to feel powerful and explosive. I'm not going to benefit anymore from going from like a 400 squat to a 450 squat. It's just going to build more compression in my spine, which I already moved like a Lego piece pretty much. I would like to get more into it. I mean, I love yoga. I've been doing yoga on and off for as long as I can remember. But I mean, I'm just like a naturally big guy, so I'm not. I'm limited with how far I can progress.
Right.
In yoga, and then like I love doing. I have a barrel sauna in my little Zen garden, ice plunge. So just love like the pillars I have of health are sunlight, grounding, environmental like stressors, and eating really good and surrounding yourself with like a nuclear family and people you love.
Yeah, amen to that. What's your sauna cold plunge routine? Do you have like a specific time, temperature,
It
rotation?
varies. I used to be like super structured and strict with my cold plunging, and getting more into like research, or not really research, I'm not a scientist, but like
Understanding the science.
exploring more, learning more about like the nervous system, and like some people, like if you're in a state of stress, like depending on who you ask, I just don't think, like I don't want to get into cold plunge if I'm already like parasympathetic. Some people like might argue otherwise, but if I feel like I'm in a good place to receive that kind of stress, then yeah, absolutely. But
So you're more intuitive with
Yeah.
your body and what it needs on that day.
yeah, and if I get into the cold plunge, I try to do my best at like not struggling, just to kind of lean in, embrace the suck, because I feel like if I get in there and I'm just like count down until like I can get out, then I'm not really in the moment. I'm not really getting the mental benefits, and maybe some of the physical benefits as well, because I don't want to be like struggling in there the whole time. I want to try to find peace in the comfort, or sorry, peace in the stress. And I used to time myself like 3 minutes. Now I'm like, even then, like timing yourself, are you really like present in the moment, or are you just like, okay, it's been 3 minutes? Like at that point, you're in the cold tub. Like, does your body really know time? It's more like I get in there and I count my breaths. I try to I'll either do 4-7-8 breathing, some box breathing, or just deep inhale, exhale.
Love that. Like pairing the breath work with that therapy. That's what I do too. Coming from the sport world, and kind of now, even though this is health and should be bipartisan and should not be political, and hopefully we can do more to disentangle it and make this an everything topic, not a political topic. But do you get pushback getting involved with this movement because people can't see past their tribalism?
Oh, yeah, totally. Absolutely. I get all kinds of criticism. But I just think we need to take a step back and realize that both sides are after the same goal and trying to solve the same problem. So I think once we find commonality there, that's a great place to start. But I just think like the way you look back on how indigenous ancestral populations used to eat, like that kind of stood the test of time. And you look at, like one of my favorite books I've read is Deep Nutrition by Kate Shanahan.
Yes, great book.
And just how she talks about like the indigenous populations and all the work that Weston A. Price did, and like their lack of cardiovascular, like diabetes, like all kinds of autoimmune disorders, and like their facial symmetries. They're just naturally like beautiful people. So I think that's a good start. I think those are kind of stood the test of time. It just makes sense to me.
What are you most excited about this movement? What do you want to see happening? What's on the top of your list? There's so many things to talk about. What's on the top of your list of, I hope they do this?
I just think like society as a whole right now is physically and mentally unhealthy. And I think once we just start with educating, I feel like there's a lot of people that don't see that what's around us or what we put in our body could be an issue. So like once, I think like I'd love to see like just education. It's kind of like it's hard to force something down somebody's throat that isn't really ready to receive it yet. So I think there's just a right and a wrong way to go about it. And I have the utmost confidence with Bobby and everybody that's here in this room and the team that they're surrounded by. I'm just super happy and humbled and blessed to be in the presence of you and the people that are here.
Likewise, man. This is such, and people don't realize this on social media. They see it as a sort of monolithic, super right-wing tribal. It's not. Like, this is a new era of a realignment, a diverse coalition of people. I mean, there's so many different viewpoints here, but we're all coming together on these topics that are so important to us and are existential topics for the country, whether they realize it or not.
Yeah, this is a badass team of people right here, and I really think that you guys can do it. Yeah.
Before we go, the podcast is called The Art of Being Well. At the end, we have Your Art of Being Well. This is like a mini episode. We'll have to have you come back for a full combo. The first question is, what's the worst tasting healthy food that you eat? You don't do it for the taste, you do it for the health benefits.
Oh, the worst tasting thing I do for health benefits?
Yeah, like a food or supplement.
What is it? I mean, I guess like liver or organs are hard to get down, but there's so many other different ways that you can get them in.
Is there a type of, like, how do you like to get organ meat to make it taste better? Or
I just get like the ground up blend. There's
Yes.
a
Force of Nature?
Force of Nature's great, and then
Yeah.
I found another one from White Oak Pastures.
Oh,
but
yeah, they're
that's
great
like
too.
40% brisket or chuck, 20% liver, 20% heart, 10% spleen, and 10% kidney. That one's a little wild tasting, but you put a little raw cheese and some corn soy-free duck eggs on it, avocado. Maybe some. I've been making some mean migas with like the masa
Yeah.
chips.
Yeah,
Have you
so
had those
good.
yet? Those are
So good.
awesome.
You know what? They had them at I forget what airport we were at, LaGuardia. Was it? I forget. Maybe.
Oh, the new LaGuardia is super nice.
Yeah. They're great. But no,
have,
it was
like-
Nashville Airport. They have masa chips in
Wow.
the Nashville Airport.
That's freaking amazing.
I know, right? They were really marked up quite
I
expensive.
would love to see more of that because like
Yes.
at the new LaGuardia Airport, they actually had like a protein smoothie place that had like
Yes.
bulletproof coffees, and I'm like, where am I right now? This is like,
I know
because
it.
it's like unfortunate. Like unless I'm in like my girlfriend lives in Austin, like unless I'm down there, there's like one restaurant in Dallas that's like seed oil free, but for the most part, we just
Yeah.
eat
Have you
at
been?
home.
You guys have Impact? Is Impact Kitchen still there in Dallas?
I don't know.
They used to be there. I think that's what they're called. They were. It's been a few years, and you have True Food Kitchen in Dallas. That's the oil free.
Oh yeah, True Food Kitchen. That
Yeah.
was always a go-to for me. Like
Yeah.
Andrew Wheel. Like
Yeah, I know, yeah.
I've been a big fan of him for
Yeah.
a long time. Trying to think what else.
And no, that was a good answer. The organ meats. Do you take supplements? I'm assuming you do. What are two maybe lesser known supplements that people should know about?
I take. Well, I did. I mean, everybody I think should do blood work, of course. Take a peek under the hood, of course.
Yeah.
So my folate levels were pretty low. So I supplemented with a heavy dose of folate, and then my girlfriend thinks she's actually a clinical nutritionist that weighs to well, so she knows Brigham, and she thinks that like because like that the mother effer gene,
Yeah,
like
THF1.
my dopamine or serotonin, I recycle it super fast. So I'm like, I don't know if that's something to do with like the high stress, the thrill, the rush of playing sports, and now I'm not playing sports, so I don't have that adrenaline quite as much. So, so I supplement with folate and SAMe, and I will do like my morning smoothie was like a raw milk smoothie. I kind of took it from Paul, raw milk smoothie. Sometimes I'll put raw colostrum. I'll get the raw colostrum from Miller's Organic in Lancaster. I don't say Lancaster anymore.
Yeah.
Lancaster.
Depends on what. Yeah.
And
It's
then,
up for debate.
And then creatine, and then I try to get as much as I can through foods, and then some magnesium 3 and 8 at night. Peptides, of course, just cause.
What peptides do you like?
BBC 157, TB4, Kisspeptin, and then Tessa, Ipamarella. Those are.
You're
Tessa-
deep wellness, man. If you're talking
Yeah.
about duck eggs and peptides, you're pretty.
I dive in. I just don't have any like formal.
No, but you live and breathe
education,
this. You
so
can
I
tell.
just learned from you guys, but.
Hey, man, happy to.
Yeah.
What is a book that you've read that was paradigm shifting for you? It could be fiction or nonfiction that I should add to the book club.
First thought on top of my head was The Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan. Was awesome. That shifted my perspective on food quite a bit. Just getting back to the roots of like real cooking. If you want carbs, you want fats, you want proteins, whatever. But like, it's like, have you ever been to like Austin, the restaurant called Dai Dewey down there?
No.
Oh, you got to check it out.
What's it called?
Dai Dewey,
Okay.
Daidue. Rogan's mentioned it a lot.
I'll check it out.
Saladino mentioned it, and it's like they just get back to the roots of like
Amazing.
ancestral cooking over the open flame, no seed oils. So
Amazing.
stuff like that. I'm trying to think what else.
It's a great book. Have you been to Picnic in Austin?
Picnic's
so
great,
good.
or the Well. The Well's awesome too.
Austin has some amazing
Yeah.
spots.
It's just a healthy community. I love
Healthy.
going to like the On It gym down there to get a sick workout. That's why I like that kind of like kettlebells, maces, the Indian clubs, like all kinds of like landmine stuff, variations. Just,
Yeah, love it, man. Where do people go to follow your work, all the things you're doing?
I'm more active on Instagram. I try to not have Instagram on. I don't even keep the app on my phone. If I download it,
Love it.
I'll download it, and I try to like just scroll for like 5 minutes, and I just get sucked in, whether it's like health or pitching mechanic videos, and next thing you know, like I fall into the trap. So I try not to be super present.
Yeah. What's your handle on Instagram?
It's just in Syndergaard.
Okay. No, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, man.